Greetings, beloveds. This is Amy Karen Johnson, the Earth Channel. I am here with you today with a message about the coming solstice. Actually, as I am publishing this video, it will be the day of the solstice in my time zone at least. Maybe tomorrow as you're seeing this, potentially, if you're watching it the day I post it. And also continuing with the series, this will be the 7th in the series on channels in human design and my particular take on human design and the sidereal zodiac. I use the tropical alignments for the 64 gates in human design, which come from the I Ching, but then I overlay the sidereal zodiac. And there is one channel in particular that is defined with the solstice today, and that is the channel formed by gates 5 and 15, and that will be circled in the chart that I will show you here. So even though I am sharing this chart with you and talking about the energies of this channel and this chart, you may also want to run your own chart and potentially charts of friends or relatives to see if they have one or both of these gates defined in their charts or your chart. So if you have not already done that, you may want to pause and go to humandesignamerica.com/chart to run your chart. If you don't know the birth time, use noon. It's a good starting place at least, and it'll give you a decent idea. One other thing about my personal interpretation of human design and the sidereal zodiac is that with the sidereal zodiac, it actually takes into account where the stars actually are in the sky with the constellations that form those signs. And so using the sidereal zodiac, I believe that those energies do come from those stars directly and are sometimes filtered through the planets, the stars, the sun, the nodes of the moon, and so forth, the moon itself. And then they're again sort of filtered, or I would even say grounded, into the earth. Human design does tell you that the earth has a position always opposite the sun, so there's that as well. However, in addition to that, I believe that the 64 hexagrams help us show how those energies are grounded into the physical realm, basically, not just Earth, but our own bodies. And the sidereal zodiac does follow the precession of the equinoxes, and so the position of the constellations that form the zodiac will gradually change relative to not only the Earth, but also the 64 hexagrams as they are shown overlaid here in the system that I use. Other people you will see typically use the tropical zodiac and the tropical gates, or sometimes you may see them use the sidereal for both, where they shift the gates along with the signs. So my take is a little unique in that way. But the channel that is defined with this solstice chart is the 515, formed by a definition in both of those gates. And as I've been talking about before, when you have that full channel defined, it will be colored in red, black, or a combination of those. And then either center on either end of that channel will also be defined. And so this one connects the G center, or what I call the heart. It's right in the center. Represents love and our sense of self and identity, as well as the sacral center, which is in the chart I'm showing you, red, a red square. The heart is the yellow diamond. And the sacral center is the most powerful motor in the body. When our gut is giving us a strong yes response to things, that gives you the energy to sustain work or effort into that endeavor for potentially a long period of time, the longest period of time of any type of thing that you may have energy for. And so even if you don't have this channel or these two centers defined in your chart, you can access these energies. And that's part of why I'm creating this video series, is to show and talk about how you can access those energies, both during the solstice, like now when they are defined for everyone, at least in a way, or through many other ways. Just opening yourself up to the heavens, to your helpers, and you can access those energies at any time, even though it may not seem quite as natural as when you're accessing the energies from your natal chart, for example. I'm also talking with this series about compromises, and a compromise occurs when one person or thing, such as the solstice, has this full channel defined, and a person usually has only one of those gates in that same channel defined, red, black, or combination of those. For me, I only have the 5th gate defined in the sacral center. I do have the sacral center defined by a different channel. I do not have the heart defined in my chart, and that makes me somewhat sensitive. And that sensitivity comes in a few different forms. One form may be a fear of missing out. Another might be feeling like you need to, and I have gone through this absolutely, especially in my younger years, feeling like you need to find love from outside yourself. So it took me a while to come to a place where I felt like I could access that self-love whenever I wanted to. And so if you have that heart open, white in your chart, you may have gone through or be going through something similar to that, some kind of sensitivity. And finally, it makes us really sensitive and pick up on other people's stories. Then if you have the sacral center open, which is not most of us, but I think up to 30% or so of the population generally is supposed to have that sacral center open or white in your chart, your natal chart. You may have not the most consistent access to energy, first of all. And then when you do access energy, in particular from other people, it may make you attached to them in a way that may not always be healthy. You may not always know when enough is enough. Getting a taste of that energy may make you, in a way, addicted to it. I don't want to overuse that word, but there are some behaviors that come along with, the understanding of addiction that can sometimes apply in that case. And you don't have to remain in that way forever. You can, like I said, access that energy whenever you want, and you can also come to accept your natural state of being without necessarily having access to that energy. When you don't have access to that energy, it gives you a unique perspective that allows you to have a broader view than those who do have it defined in their natal chart. Those people who do have it defined can still access that point of view at some point when they sort of wake up, but it may not come as easily to them. So there's definitely a gift with all of these different combinations and configurations. This channel in particular has a lot to do with the rhythms of life, the rhythms of our bodies, and the rhythms of nature. It can be really great to express the energy of this channel through dancing, for example. You can see how that is related to rhythms. But by themselves, these gates have to do with, the 5th gate has to do with patience, which I would define as, this is, like I said, a gate that is defined in my birth chart, so I've had a lot of experience with it. Patience I would define as being a way to be content while waiting for potentially something else. And in that way, it may not even feel like you're waiting because you're content as you are. And so what is there to necessarily wait for? And maybe that's a different definition for patience than you've heard before, but it's one of the more effective ways to just let something come to you in its own time, in its own rhythm. The 15th gate, which is right now defined by the sun in the solstice chart, which is partly why I wanted to focus on this channel. It has a theme of moderation, but it is quite easy for anyone, whether you have this gate or channel defined or not, whether you have either of these centers defined or not, to sometimes get into a habit of with a lack of moderation, any kind of habit. So every summer, I think people often, in general, just generally speaking, get a little carried away sometimes with the many different things to do during summertime. I'm speaking, of course, of people in the northern hemisphere. It's probably the same in the southern hemisphere, although obviously your summer happens at the other end of the year. But, particularly here in the United States, it's coming up to the 4th of July, our Independence Day, and people are already setting off fireworks, and especially this year because of COVID and lockdowns and things not being open, not being able to necessarily travel as much as we need to. People are just really going to extremes this year. And unfortunately, I think that nature is paying for it in some ways. Now, I do believe that nature, Mother Earth, Gaia, are very resilient, and that we can rehabilitate nature in whatever ways we need to, but it's before we can rehabilitate nature, at least in the broad sense of that thought and sentiment. Before we can do that, we have to begin really practicing moderation. We really need to get back in touch with our sense of flow. What is appropriate now? Our sense of timing. Maybe right now isn't the time for you to go on a trip. And, maybe it's because you can't afford it. Maybe it's just not good timing for you astrologically. There are absolutely good and not so good times to travel astrologically for everyone. And I'm not an expert in that particular focus within astrology, so I may or may not necessarily be able to tell you that. But basically, we need to start appreciating the nature that's right outside our front doors. I have certainly been appreciating that more and more myself, having had a dog for a year now, a new dog. My old dog passed away almost 2 years ago now. And he's needed a lot of training, and I feel like we're finally getting to a place where we can trust each other more. But, he still needs walking. And I think in addition to, people wanting to go out and do all kinds of things that they haven't been able to lately or in the last year, they have manifested some very hot weather, at least around here, maybe around the world right now, I'm not sure. But that has had the effect of causing a lot of wildfires right now. They're all across the country. The air quality here right now is terrible. And it feels to me like people have just been so raring to go, ready for summer, wanting to get in the water, get in a pool, wanting it to be hot enough for that they've overdone it a little bit, unfortunately, even with just their manifestations. And so in my last videos, I talked about manifestation quite a bit. You might want to go back and watch those. I did not talk about this aspect of moderation, though. So in addition to what we choose to do, what actions we choose, we also need to think about moderation in terms of what we wish for, what we hope for, what we desire, and what we try to manifest in our lives and in our worlds. Whenever you have awoken to some of the realities of this world, that's oftentimes just the beginning of your path and finding ways to be in harmony with nature, with the cosmos, and with your higher self. And we are social creatures, of course, so that can be really difficult sometimes, that process, that transition. And we may not always immediately have people in our social circles who completely support us and who share this sense of moderation, this sense of flow and timing, right timing for all these different things. And so it can be really difficult to hold your own. I certainly went through that for a long time. And I feel like this past year, with the lockdowns and with things being closed down, I really was able to ground my sense of self, my sense of rhythm, my sense of flow, and what I need more than ever before, much more than ever before. I've really spent this last year just completely loving myself, loving the nature outside my door, loving my dog, of course, working with him, but just really getting in tune with what it is that I need on a physical level, on a soul level, on a heart level. And so, there's, for a good reason, a term out there, FOMO, fear of missing out. And I think all of us went through that this last year in some ways, but in other ways, we have gotten over it a little bit more. I think there are some of you who share this as well. We have realized that there is a sense of peace, a sense of well-being that we can access without having to run around and find our next experience out there. It's within. And so that's what this solstice is asking us to not only get in tune with, get in touch with, but remember from this past year. Remember those times when you found that happiness does not have to come from an external source. And if you hadn't necessarily found that yet, now is a great time to do that as well. When you just sit with yourself and just send love to yourself, place your hand on your heart if that helps. Send love to yourself. You can do this anytime you want. You can always send love to yourself, and that is the best way to find happiness in any single moment. So when we have this compromise happening, as you may a little bit with this solstice, a person has only one gate within this 515 channel defined, and at least the solstice, if not someone else in your life, has the full channel defined. It can feel like you are missing out in some ways. Your process is being interrupted, something along those lines. And so that is the great time to access these energies. Like I said, place your hand on your heart. Just sit. Don't necessarily feel the need to be doing all the time or running around, especially in your cars. We would all appreciate your contribution to better air quality by not necessarily using your motorized vehicles all the time. Use some moderation there as well. I still love to travel. I'm not saying no one should ever travel anymore. But do recall that last year when this all first started happening, and even flights weren't necessarily happening almost at all, dolphins and swans came back to the canals of Venice for the first time. So there were some really beautiful things that started happening, that the earth started healing last year. And so I encourage us all to look for those new ways, those ways that we can continue as well to use moderation, get into our flow, get into that sense of timing. Because if you run around and do something when it's not the right time, you're not going to have a satisfying experience anyway. Okay, I think that just about covers that particular channel as far as what I have to share. So let's tune in with Gaia. I invite you to join me, and I will channel a message from her. So close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. So Gaia would like to highlight the way that using motorized vehicles is our perhaps unconscious way of beginning to exercise some of the abilities that we will have once we ascend to the fifth dimension. For example, teleportation. If any of you have read Autobiography of a Yogi, you know that it is already possible for those souls who have meditated, who have raised their vibration, done yoga, breathing, not just hatha yoga, but kriya yoga, for example, is the type of yoga that really accelerates a being's evolution. There are those saints in India who can already be in two places at once, who can materialize more than one body at the same time. These are the types of abilities that will be more possible in the fifth dimension. Maybe not for everyone all the time, but as we continue to ascend even through that dimension, we will be able to access those abilities more and more, just like with the faster and faster manifestation as well. And so when we run around, travel, take road trips, drive all over the place, use our ATVs, our motorboats, etc., we are trying to access that ability sooner. And there are gifts to be had by using those various vehicles. And yet, if we depend upon them too much and we do not use them in moderation, we will be less likely to be able to tune in to the rhythms of Gaia as she ascends with us. And she has so much there to support us in our ascension. Not only will we slow down our ascension and our ability, the speed with which that ability comes where we are able to access many different locations whenever we wish. But when we are constantly running around or frequently running around in these motorized vehicles, it causes us to lose our connection, not completely, but at least temporarily, our connection with Gaia herself, Mother Earth. And so that's the reason we need to look for more and more opportunities to just get out and walk. Just get out and be with Mother Earth, whether it's alone or together. And yes, sometimes maybe to be together, you do have to still drive. There are more and more electric vehicles being created every day, so that's a great alternative to at least not pollute the air so much. But we will still need to slow down and find those times near where we live, where we can appreciate nature and get in touch with not only Gaia, but our higher selves and that flow that supports us in so many ways. One other skill that we are already being given access to, if we slow down in this way, if we open to these different energies in this way, is telepathy. Not only can we access the thoughts of others, the feelings of others who are incarnated physically in this realm with us, but we can communicate with higher beings, with higher beings in the form of extraterrestrials, as well as our higher selves, Mother Earth, and the intelligence she has waiting in store for us, as well as those in the higher dimensions, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. Those beings that resemble angels, archangels even, ascended masters. Those are the only ones who are finished with the ascension process. And they can be anywhere at any time and everywhere at any time, basically. They can help all of us at once. There's really no topic, no concern too trivial to ask for their assistance with. And they will assist you. However, if you can slow down in this way and get in touch with your higher self, your higher good at least, you will be most successful in receiving the support and help and manifestations that you truly need when you tune in to the path that you are meant for in this lifetime. And finally, I know many of you seek your purpose in this world, seek your purpose in this lifetime. And we would like to encourage you to focus not upon what you are doing so much as how you are doing it. And this is a wonderful thing that Richard Rudd talks about in his work on the gene keys. I've mentioned this before. I encourage you to look that up as well if you'd like. Basically, he takes each and every one of these 64 gates, these 64 hexagrams, and he also calls them gene keys that come from the I Ching, and shows how to access the higher expression of each of them. Basically, with the premise that there is no bad gate. There is no bad aspect. There is no bad star out there. I talked about this last week as well. And each of them in that higher expression helps to show us how to access our purpose. What is it that we are meant to bring into this world? Perhaps it's a creation. Perhaps it's even tangible. But perhaps not. Perhaps it's an energy. Perhaps it's simply love. A particular kind of love. Perhaps it's a loving way of being. And as we look through each of these gates and each of these channels, we can begin to explore the way we are meant to live in this world, the way we are meant to be in this world. And those many different kinds of love are the greatest gifts of all. So if you have a gate or a channel that you would like to explore more, please put it in the comments on this YouTube video, and I will at least consider covering that one next. If you would like to contact me, my email is in the description as well, and we could also have a conversation about what it is you're experiencing around that particular gate in your chart. And yes, we are offering both as Amy Karen Johnson and as Gaia, as Mother Earth. Deep breath. Let it go. Also, don't forget to ground. Grounding helps that love to flow into our hearts even more readily. Thank you so much for joining me. Namaste, beloveds. Thank you for watching, subscribing, liking, sharing, and clicking the bell button to be notified when the new weekly message comes out.